This episode of The Biggest Table is brought to you in part by Wild Goose Coffee. Since 2008, Wild Goose has sought to build better communities through coffee. For our listeners, Wild Goose is offering a special promotion of 20% off a one-time order using the code TABLE at checkout. To learn more and to order coffee, please visit wildgoosecoffee.com. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Jeremy Jernigan. Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Biggest Table. I am your host, Andrew Camp, and in this podcast, we explore the table, food, eating, and hospitality as an arena for experiencing God's love and our love for one another. And today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Jeremy Jernigan. Jeremy is a writer, speaker, and recovering megachurch pastor. After 2 decades in full-time ministry, including serving as lead pastor, he now focuses on helping people rebuild their faith after it breaks. He is the author of The Edge of the Inside, and he hosts the weekly Rebuilding Faith series and the bi-weekly Cabernet and Pray podcast. Jeremy lives in Arizona with his wife and 5 kids. So thanks for joining me today, Jeremy. It's great to have you on this podcast, and yeah, looking forward to some fun conversation.
Andrew, I'm excited. The last time you and I hung out, we were drinking in a church.
We were, yes.
So this just feels right to drink and talk about God together.
It does, except we were drinking beer and then you were mocking me because I had drank some wine and went out for a nice meal and didn't invite you. So
I don't think mocking, I think more like chastising, because I felt so excluded from this very cool experience you had that I heard about after the fact, because I wasn't invited to it. So then I just heard about it.
And to be fair,
it sounded really cool.
We were at Theology Beer Camp, which is a great event. And I didn't know you were coming to Theology Beer Camp until
that's fair.
You showed up. So,
yes. But this year, you know, I'm coming.
This year, yes.
No excuses. Let the record state. No excuses.
No. And it's in Kansas City this year. So there's going to be some great barbecue places that I have yet to figure out where. And so I'm working on it.
I'm excited.
Me too.
I hope I get an invite this year.
You will. You will. Well, all right. So on your podcast, Cabernet and Pray, you invite the guests to share a bottle with you and you drink together, and I think many guests have shared it loosens their tongue. So by the end of the episode, they're saying what they normally wouldn't say on a podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so it's fun. And so I thought, because we both love wine and we're into wine, we could do something slightly different that actually does correlate to your book. And for listeners who don't know, my day job is I'm a wine rep for a local distributor in Arizona. We distribute boutique family wines. So I get to drink a lot of good wines that you're not going to find in the grocery store. Wines that, from wineries that care about the craft and care about the earth and want to do something in respect to the grape and to the world. And so today, because of that, I thought, let's drink 2 bottles of wine and compare and contrast. Because it does, we'll tease out the implications, but we're going to be drinking 2 Pinot Noirs. So the first wine is the Meiomi Pinot Noir from California, 2023 vintage. My camera's out of focus, so never mind. And the second one is we're going to be drinking from Lemelson Vineyards in Willamette from their Sturmer Vineyard. So it's a single-vineyard Pinot Noir from the Yamhill Carlton AVA. So within Willamette, there's different AVAs that produce different styles of Pinot, and you really do get a sense of the taste from the different AVAs. And so you never had Meiomi till yesterday. So tell me, when you heard I wanted us to drink a bottle of Meiomi, what did you think, Jeremy?
So what's funny is I've heard about Meiomi all the time. And at the last event I did, we do a lot of events with Community Wine Co. at bars or in wine settings. So we literally were at a bar and someone brought up the fact that they love Meiomi. And so if they're listening to this, no hate to you. So I was like, oh, okay, that's that's people really love this. This is their go-to. And so I was kind of like excited to okay, there's been some cheaper wines that I've liked, Yeah. And here's what I've got. I've got questions for you.
Okay.
Andrew.
I haven't tasted it yet today, so I'm curious.
And my question is, I don't understand. And here's what I would say. Okay. So this is not in my wine journey. So I started off probably like many people drinking cheap wine and not caring and had no palate for it. Then I ended up moving to Oregon, got into the Willamette Valley, got into Pinot Noirs, which we're, enjoying today. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is a game changer. And then since then have been really spoiled with what I get to drink, because it's mainly single vineyard type, or, very, very isolated kind of stuff. So I remember the first time I was on an airplane and they're like, oh, you want anything? I'm like, oh, I'll get a glass of wine. And it was after this, and I hadn't had wine on an airplane in a long time. And it was like the worst swill, and I'm like, I literally couldn't get that down.
Right.
So I say that not because Meiomi is that, because it's not. I could drink Meiomi and it would, like, I can get it down. We're fine. I'm just confused. I feel like if you love this, have you had other ones like that? I guess that's my question. Like, is this because you have done like what we're doing and you like this one? Is it because it's more affordable? But even then, I'm trying to remember what I spent. It wasn't as cheap as I thought it was going to be.
No, it's still $15 to $20 retail at a grocery store.
So I'm like, okay, so this is not a cheap bottle. You're kind of mid-range, because I think for $30 you can get a really nice bottle.
Yep. Right.
So I don't know. I guess I'm confused. When I taste this, I get like, it feels sugary and jammy.
Yes.
And almost like I have like a sip of it and I'm like, I don't know how much I could drink of it in one setting. That's kind of like the vibe. Yeah. What do you get out of it?
Definitely sugar. It's big. It's jammy. It's a wine that Psalms love to hate. It's hated on in key regions. But yeah, like it's fine. Like, it's not like the worst wine I've ever tasted.
This is how I feel. It's like, I could drink it,
Right. But why? And again, this is a wine in 2023, Meiomi sold 1.8 million cases of wine. Like, so we're talking.
Do you know how expansive are they getting these grapes from? Like, how do they do that?
And that's where it's interesting, right? Because, the bottle Meiomi says California appellated. So like the grapes can come from anywhere in California. So this is not estate fruit. The grapes can come from, Santa Barbara. I think originally they wanted it to represent the coastal Pinot Noir categories from like Santa Barbara, Sonoma, and then they mentioned one more when I was doing some research. And so like it was meant to be an everyday Pinot because the family, this is coming from the Wagner family who owns Camus. They own Belglas, huge winemaking family, but they wanted to make a wine that wasn't a Pinot that wasn't super expensive. And so, they're capitalizing on the effects of sideways, all of this interesting stuff. But yeah, and for it to be labeled Pinot in the US, it has to have at least 75% Pinot. So they can be adding other stuff and
I think they are.
Right. We think they are. And again, they're not disclosing. They're not going to disclose what they're doing. Which is fine, right? But they can be adding some Syrah, they can be adding some concentrated grape juice. But as long as it's 75%, it can be still labeled Pinot Noir.
What's interesting, doing these side by side, on the nose, way more of a pronounced effect from that than the other one, just on the nose, where it's like almost like if you were a cab drinker and you wanted something more like that, this might be a Pinot you like.
Exactly.
Because it's kind of that hits you in the face with fruit.
Yeah. And I was able to try Belglas recently. Maybe this was a couple months ago because another rep had it. She's like, oh, you should try it. And I try it and I'm like, oh, like it was, again, this style of Pinot, very fruit forward, very jammy, and again, there's some regions in California that produce heavier Pinots. But yeah, it's just,
I will say this to its credit. I opened my bottle yesterday. I was doing a tasting and was not a good first impression. It's tasting better today. So maybe it needs to breathe a little bit.
Maybe it just
needs a little love.
Right. And then on the other hand, we have the Lemelson. And if you're like me, you have two glasses next to you because you weren't, Yep.
I got to.
So yeah, Lemelson. What I love about Lemelson is it was started in 1995 by Eric Lemelson. What's fun story about this wine is that, or this winery, is that Eric's dad is Jerome Lemelson, who was a crazy inventor in the 20th century. His first invention was the whirly beanie cap, which is why on the bottle you see the whirly beanie cap.
Wow, that's a fun fact.
Yeah, but how does this guy whose dad's an inventor get to buy an estate in Willamette?
Mm-hmm.
His dad, in the 1970s, invented the barcode and the barcode reader.
Wow.
Yeah, you talk about an invention that changed the course of history.
I imagine he probably did well off that.
Yeah. Yes.
I've seen a few barcodes recently, so I'm imagining that took off for him.
Yeah, that helps. But Eric was an environmental attorney before starting the winery. So when he built Lemelson, he built it with all reclaimed materials, wood from the forest, I think even using reclaimed concrete that he got from the state of Oregon. It's all gravity flow winemaking, which is a gentler idea. So you're not pushing it through pumps, and disturbing the wine, but allowing just natural temperatures to take place. And all of their fruit is estate. So meaning they have their own vineyards and they're getting their grapes. So all of their wines come from estate fruit. And so we're drinking the Sturmer Vineyard. This is from the Yamhill Carlton AVA. It's their biggest, or not their biggest, but it's sort of their more, of their single vineyard Pinots, it's their biggest. So it's more of the earthy style. Some of their other ones are more fruit forward finesse. This one has a little more body to it and structure to it.
The color is totally different than the other one.
Yes.
So the Meiomi is much more of like a purple.
Right.
This is much more red, like just true, almost maroon red.
Yeah. You can see through it. It's lighter, so it's a little more translucent. Only 522 cases of this wine produced. Lemelson can only produce 12,000 cases a year. So,
okay, so you are more well-rounded, cultured with your career and in the wine industry. I am heavily biased toward Willamette Valley Pinot, unabashedly, primarily what I drink.
Right.
So I'm curious. You have, I've never really had a California Pinot I loved.
Okay.
So I want to be fair to Meiomi. I don't really love Meiomi, but I also don't really love most California Pinots because I am a Oregon Pinot snob, admittedly.
Yep, for sure.
So from you, I'm guessing you have more of a balanced palate than me in this regard. What do you think about like California Pinots in general, and then how would you put Meiomi in that category?
That's a great question. I drink above my pay grade. Fair enough, right? And so getting to try different styles. And I want to do a side by side at some point of, let's do Santa Rita Hills, which is the Santa Barbara area for Pinots. Carneros produces, Sonoma Pinots, and then you have Willamette. So, to do a fair side by side. But I like, from California, I like more of the Santa Rita area. So this is Santa Barbara, cooler climate. You're right near the ocean. The geography is super unique. I
will agree. Those are the best California Pinots I've had.
Yeah, because they're a little lighter. They're more acid driven. They're fun. They're making some really cool Chardonnays in the Santa Rita areas as well, much like, Oregon. And so, I think Carneros will be much more jammy, and that's not the fairest representation, but they'll be bigger. Sonoma's warmer, so you're going to get a bigger style of Pinot. But Willamette, people say, Willamette's this sort of fine line between California and Burgundian style, and so we were doing a blind tasting with some friends on Wednesday, and I had an Oregon Pinot that they were blinding on, and many people called Burgundy. And so, whereas California has a little more, structure, fruit forwardness to it. Drinking good Pinot, you begin to see the uniqueness of the grape and what the beauty of what it can produce. which I know you're familiar with. And so, yeah, it's been fun to actually, once you drink good Pinot, you realize, oh, this is why I could never buy a good bottle before, because they're
well, and because the grape skin is so thin, it's such a finicky grape.
Right.
So I love that. I hate it in the fact that it's expensive because it due the nature of that. But I love it because it really shows off good winemaking when they know what they're doing with it.
Yep.
And you see like these single vineyards and a lot of the stuff in Oregon. It's like these guys are artists with what they're doing, and so. That's what I love too, is I feel like the Oregon ones are so balanced where like in this one, I can pick out great fruit notes of like cranberry and cherry, and it's definitely there, but it's not overpowering. It doesn't feel jammy at all. You also get the minerality. I feel like I can taste some of the soil that's there too in a perfect, like nothing's overpowering anything. And it's just like delightful, and it's like everything belongs the right way.
Yeah.
And that's to me, like when you can taste those different qualities, that's a great Pinot Noir.
For sure. And then it's going to vary from year to year because vintages change, right? 2022, I was reading, it was the year of the frost where there was late frost into April in Oregon, which delayed or, ruined some buds. Thankfully, there were secondary bud breaks, but then it warmed up through October. And so, they were saying these are producing more powerful style Pinots in 2022 that might, cellar longer. And so, for these smaller wineries, the year to year difference makes is huge.
It's interesting. I have had you talk about, you mentioned earlier that there are some big Pinots that California does, tries to make them really big. Oregon has some big Pinots too, but they're not big in the same way. They're way more, those tertiary notes of that's how they get big. Right. And so it's almost like they take the best part of a cab without it becoming a cab, And so then you have like there's this place called Archery Summit, which is one of my all-time favorites. And they make some robust Oregon Pinots.
Okay.
But they're not like hit you in the face with fruit,
No.
And so it's like, it's just the whole thing is balanced well. And so again, I don't see California doing the same thing, but I'm like, is it just because I love Oregon and I have more experience there? So that's why I'm like, I don't want to knock all California what they're doing, but I'm a sucker for Oregon Pinot.
I totally get it. And that's fair. I think, we'll have to taste some good California Pinots so you can be like, oh, okay, I see what they're doing. And, it's fun.
Maybe.
But see, where the difference is, where Lemelson might vary from year to year, Meiomi, they are building a wine that is going to be consistent, right? Like they want the consistent taste profile. So they're engineering it every year to taste the same because it's what customers like, right? They don't want their Meiomi to taste different.
But to me, that's the best part of like finding a vineyard you like.
Yes.
And then getting each year of that vineyard. So this is like, when you're a member of a winery, it's like you get to track the same vineyards over the years.
Right.
And that to me is the coolest thing of like, okay, like with Archery Summit I was mentioning earlier, their Arcus vineyard is my favorite.
Okay.
So the Arcus bottles are always, I'm so excited. And I can tell you like 2011 Arcus, my all-time favorite Arcus. Like, there's just years that you're like that year, but they're not the same, even though it's literally the same vines, same plants from the same place year after year.
Right.
But to your point, that way of winemaking, there is a lot of variety year to year. And I love that variety. Whereas you realize when you get to these massive mega blends, you're not going to get any of that. You're going to get the exact same thing every year.
Yeah. Well, and then it's fun too, because, I've been able to taste Lemelson single vineyards side by side, where like the same year, so they have 3 different single vineyard expressions. And, to taste them side by side, where it's the same winemaker, same winemaking techniques, same oak regimen. And the only thing different is where the grapes were planted, and the nuance and the distinctiveness of each grape, of each single vineyard, you begin to pick up on. You're like, oh, wow, like this is the beauty of Pinot, is that it gives expression to the terroir, which is fancy French word that people make fun of. But once you taste it, you're like, oh no, this is real. and where the grapes are planted within miles of each other makes a huge difference.
Well, and when the soil is different, even if it's, one hill over, and you're like, oh, it's actually a different soil, which matters. Like this affects the taste. And when you do those kind of tastings, you're like, oh, this is both Pinot, but it tastes very different. My favorite that I had at Archer Summit was one time I've become friends with some of the guys. So the tasting manager one time was like, hey, let's geek out and do something fun. I'm like, yes, let's do it. So he brings out of Arcus, which is my favorite vineyard, brings out a 2001, a 2011, and a 2021. And so we got to taste 20 years of variety of the same exact, grape. Now, these are probably different winemakers at that point, but I mean, that was like the coolest thing to realize. These are the same plants making, the fruit in these bottles. And yet to see how the years and the aging and, I mean, that was like, this is when people are like, all wine is wine, it tastes the same. It's grape juice. It's like, you don't need to be snobby about it, but don't call it grape juice. It's like, there's so much to it that is really beautiful if you learn how to embrace it.
Right. And you don't have to be the snob, right? Like, I think that's
totally.
And this is where I think I want to come back to as we discuss more of your book, because we do want to pay homage to this
I
work.
thought we were just talking about wine today.
I would love to just talk about wine, but I think, the beauty of wine is it does carry over into life. If we watch Sideways, I meant to grab the quote, but where he talks about Pinot as thin-skinned and finicky, and really he's describing himself. And, Pinot.
Such a great movie.
And we're not going to drink F and Merlot.
Sorry, Merlot.
But
we love you.
Wasn't the bottle he finished on, a Merlot? So people,
that's the beauty of that movie. People don't realize he ends on a Merlot, which is like so great.
Yeah. So, but your book, we're recording this a few days out from your release. The podcast will release post when your book is out, but you've written this book and it's born out of a journey of grief, pain, disappointment. So just for our listeners to get a glimpse of why this book at this point, like unpack a little bit, share your story, what you're comfortable with.
Yeah. Wine helps.
Certainly. Wine does help. Yes.
I came from what I would call the center of Christianity. And this is some of the language I use in the book, where I'm second generation preachers. So grew up, I was the kid growing up in the pews, had my little toys and action figures. On the way up, I decide this is what I want to do as well. This is super cool. I go get, my degree in church ministry, love it. End up, working in the church for 2 decades. And it was like everything I wanted it to be. Ended up becoming a lead pastor of a multi-site megachurch in the Pacific Northwest. Hence when I fell in love with wine. That all correlates together. And would have told you, I got the job in 2017, would have told you this is my dream job. I'm retiring in this position. It was like everything has led me to this. This is all I've ever wanted for my career. I loved it. Fast forward 3 years and the world is very different in 2020. And you have COVID, which disrupts everything, as we all remember. You also had George Floyd's murder, which sent this ripple effect throughout our country. And there was a variety of these like reactionary hubs to that. And Portland became one of them, where there was like a groundswell of reaction to that. So everybody around us is talking about it. We were in Portland. And it's like everybody's talking about it. So I'm like, the church should be talking about it. Like we should, not that we have the solution necessarily, but like we need to engage with this moment. And things derailed so fast. It was the wildest, where I realized the majority of the church was really with me, leaning in, ready, like, yes, what does it mean to be a Christian in this moment? What does it mean for us to side with people who are vulnerable and hurting and being oppressed and like all of that? Then you had a pocket of people that were not interested in that.
No.
And they had the relational dynamic to say, we don't want to be this church. And that's not what we intended. And so I go from thinking this is my dream job to getting a 2-page ultimatum out of the blue from my elder board that basically says, shut up about all of this, just preach Jesus. And, we don't want to talk about, we don't want to be this kind of church. And it's a much longer story. It's part one
Yep.
of the book. So if
Yep.
you'd like to get into all the details, I get into all the details, and
Yeah.
some of them I think are crazy. So that leads me to this decision of what did I go into ministry for? Was it to keep the thing running, or was it to ultimately follow Jesus into whatever I sensed Jesus leading me to next? And
Yeah.
that was like a real no-brainer. You know, it's like, I don't care about maintaining this. So I end up resigning from my dream job 3 years in, and we lose all of our friends. We lose everything. We were trying to stay in Oregon. Again, I tell the story in the book.
Yeah.
We're trying to stay in Oregon, realized we couldn't, have to move back to Arizona, where we're originally from, in like utter defeat. And chapter 1 opens with like my rock bottom story.
Yes.
And people have loved it because it's, you can smell the details in the story. I'll just give you that hint.
Yep.
And I then entered what I would call liminal space, and most people are familiar with that term, where you can't go back to where you've been, but you haven't arrived at where you're going, and you're just kind of stuck, right? And I was there for like 5 years, and it was horrible because it was like, who am I? Am I a pastor still if I'm not officially out of church? Do I keep preaching? Do I pivot to something else? I started doing more with wine in that season, just because I was like, hey, you can be honest around a glass of wine about these things without having the same pressures that you get in church. And so it's really been a handful of years, and I've tried to write this story for like 4 or 5 different times. And every time I would try to write it, it just didn't feel right. And I was like, I'm either coming across bitter, or I'm not even resolved, or I don't know what the point of this is yet, And so it was like, it's not ready. But it's I'm a writer. So it's like, that's how I process, I just keep writing things, and it was like, it's not ready. And then about a year or two ago, I went at it again, and it was like everything clicked. And it was like, all of a sudden I understand this. And so then it became, I want to tell this story so the book's called The Edge of the Inside. The idea being, we expect God to be found in the center. And Richard Rohr came up with this phrase, and he actually says that God is more often found, and truth is more often found on the edges, and not in the center of it. And that just brought me to life when I realized, oh, that is where I'm experiencing God, is on the edge, not in the center anymore. So then part 1 of the book is that journey, and then inviting the reader to figure out, like, maybe you've gone through that journey too, and you didn't realize it. Maybe it wasn't as dramatic as mine, but you're like, oh, I've been moving away from the center. Hadn't really known I did, but and some people are like, that's 100% me. It's like exactly what I'm doing. And then part 2 is, okay, how do we rethink God from a different vantage point, right? Because when you view God from the center, you view God the way you're told to view God from the center theology. But when you go to the edges, that's not how you have to understand God. And there's all this other room to understand God in different ways. So part 2 is really rethinking all of these Greek ideas of God that Western Christianity has assumed is normative, and challenging them and going, what if we didn't view it like that? What if we allowed the scriptures to open up new doors? And what's been so cool about that, Andrew, is people are telling me, it's like, we have, some people in our launch team that have read an early version of it. They're like, we've never heard these ideas before about God, which is like the coolest thing to me.
Yeah.
If this book becomes like someone's first exposure to some really cool ways of understanding and experiencing God. And then part 3 of the book is, okay, so if we're willing to journey from the center to the edge, we start rethinking God and going, okay, maybe God isn't who we thought God was. Part 3 is, how do we move forward now? Like, what does this look like to put all this together? And, Walter Brueggemann has this idea that imagination has to come before implementation. And it's that idea of, once we start to imagine it, then let's start to implement. What does this look like? And part 3 is like my attempt at, here's how we can start to move forward with all this.
First, thank you for sharing, and that it took 5 years, because I think I'm 2 years out from losing my job, and at times it still feels disorienting and WTF moments, and like, where am I? Who am I? What is comfortable? So I think allowing that space, even for listeners to say, okay, moving away from what you once knew of faith, and whatever that looks like for that person, like, it's going to take time and grief and sorrow. But there was also a point for the center, because you and I were both raised from the center, right? Like I was never the pastor's kid, but my dad was an elder, at a large church. We were known as a family. All my friends were the pastor's kids, elder kids, missionary kids, and so the center nurtured us.
Yeah.
And so for you, like looking back 5 years now and having that perspective of not anger, bitter, resentment, like where can you name those things that the center gave you that you are good? Because I think it's easy to say the center's all bad. Let's burn it all down. But the wisdom is, okay, who am I? Because I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the center.
Sure. No, it's a great question. Because I think some people hear this, and if you're not willing to entertain the conversation, often I found the knee-jerk reaction is, oh, you're just bitter at the church. And I just encourage people like, no, it's not bitterness. And I hope you can read the book, because I talk about the things that I'm grateful for. And there's lots of them. I grew up believing Jesus was real.
Yeah.
Not just because someone told me, but because I saw the effects of following Jesus. What a gift to grow up with that awareness of course Jesus is real. I see Jesus affect people's lives every week. Like that alone is so great. And so, when I stepped away from being a lead pastor, I got asked a lot, are you and Jesus okay? And I'd always tell people, oh, I'm not confused on who did this to me. It wasn't Jesus. This was the church. Jesus and I are good. The church and I have got some things we got to work through, right? And so that's what it was. Well, I was introduced to Jesus as a kid. Like, I'm so grateful for that environment. I'm grateful to see that I think the majority of Christians have really good intentions. They have really good desires. They want to follow God. They want to make the world a better place. There's beauty in Christianity, even with its flaws. Like, I got to grow up immersed in all of that, to the point where it's like I wanted to spend the rest of my life doing it. Like, it wasn't a negative. I loved it. You know what I mean? And so there's lots of that. And the image that I think is the most helpful is, rather than thinking, oh, I have to go burn that down because that's the former version of me, or I don't live in the center anymore. Here's what I encourage people to do is compost all of that, right? Let it die, but let it die as nutrients for what is growing in you now. And so to me, those parts of me, that journey, like, there's so many versions of me that I would say, I remember thinking that and being that. Those parts of me are dead, but they've composted and they have allowed me. I couldn't be who I am today without those parts. Right. So there is a gratitude, not because those parts were the end all be all, but because those parts led me to where I am today. And I'm so grateful today. And, watching people react to this book already by saying like, oh my gosh, this is my story. You're giving language to my story. Literally, I'm like, then this all was worth it.
Yeah.
Like, all the pain, and so even you, as like 2 years in, you're like, how could this be? It's like when you're in the middle of it, just nothing feels worth it. But when you start to see like, oh, beauty's coming from what has been composted, new things are growing out of it.
Yeah.
That's the appreciation. So there's no bitterness, but there's also, I don't have to give blanket endorsements on it.
No.
And I think for a lot of people that nuance is maybe confusing. But it's like you can live in that nuance, and it's not confusing.
No.
And so I can be grateful for all of that and still not want to go back to it.
Right. Because you can appreciate Meiomi. You can say, okay, it is what it is.
So good.
But it's also realizing, hey, the single vineyard Lemelson has a little more complexity. There's some beauty to be brought out.
And here's what I would say, and this is why you came up with, I want to give all credit to this analogy. This wine game we're playing is you, and it's brilliant. And here's what I would tell you. How many people could use Meiomi as a gateway to get to Lemelson? Right? Yeah. So let's say you decide, I like Meiomi. I might be a wine drinker.
Right.
That's awesome.
Perfect.
Like, you and I would want more wine drinkers. Like we like wine drinkers. So if Meiomi helps you decide you're a wine drinker, that's awesome. As a wine drinker now, I want to introduce you to the Willamette Valley, right? Yeah, and so exactly. It's like, So it's not burn down Meiomi. It's let's use what Meiomi can bring to you to keep going, keep growing, keep evolving. And that's, to me, that was my question. I was like, if you love Meiomi, is it because you haven't had other things, or is it because you stopped there and that is your favorite? My guess is you didn't keep going. You didn't keep trying new things. You just kind of said, hey, this is good. I like it, which is probably what the center is for a lot of people, right? Like, this is good. I like it. It works.
It works
until it doesn't, until something happens, or, you have that moment. But for a lot of people, and I imagine a lot of your listeners, they're like, yeah, I had a moment that didn't work for me anymore.
Right.
And then you got to figure out, what do you do now?
No. And we could even tie it into scripture of Hebrews chapter 5, verses 12 through 14, where like Meiomi may be the milk, and like Lemelson's now the meat, more complexity, like.
Wow, you are running with this analogy, and I'm here for it, Andrew. I'm here for it.
Pastors, we got to find the analogy in everything, right?
That's incredible.
But it's true, like, right? Like, like there is that space, right? Like Meiomi, again, it introduced you to something.
Totally.
It introduced you, and we like it, and it's familiar, and it's the milk. And my seminary degrees in spiritual formation, and our professor John Coe used to always say, like, when we first become Christians, we drink from milk. Like, God gives us milk, like a newborn baby and a mother, like, and we love it because it's easy. There's nothing we have to do for it, but once God takes away that bottle or the nipple, like, like, what do we do? What do we do? And we have to figure out new ways to relate to God. And we have to figure out, what does this look like, and who is Jesus if he's not, that.
Well, and I think for a lot of people, to the point you're making, your theology works until it doesn't.
Right.
Until you have some question that you can't answer with your current understanding of God, or you have a life event happen that you can't make sense of with your current understanding of God. And that's what I'm really getting at holistically in the book. So it's not just memoir. That's just kind of like the first part of it. Yeah. But it's really trying to equip people to say, when you have your own journey from the center to the edge and you're like, this doesn't work anymore. And again, it can be a job loss of a loved one. I mean, anything that disrupts what was working, right?
Yeah.
And welcome to life. I mean, we all have all sorts of these moments, right? So then you're like, well, this is how I've always explained God, but that doesn't seem to work right now. And people have questions of, like, theological questions, like, okay, so I just talked to someone the other day in our online community. It was so fascinating. She was becoming a missionary, and she's literally getting trained to go be a missionary. And in this training, they tell her how many millions of people, billions around the world, are going to hell unless missionaries reach them. And in the training, she thinks, what kind of a monstrous God would send this many people to hell if people like me don't go and talk to them? And as she's training to be a missionary, she starts deconstructing that idea and going, that doesn't make any sense that this God that I have experienced would do that. There must be something else. So she quits and backed out, and is like, I need to rethink God. This doesn't make sense to me.
No.
And that became the thing for her. And so it's like, you can get into this in any angle, right? Of this doesn't work, or this idea, or this question. And then you need something to rethink it. And the way I've described it is, the theology in this book, in part 2, is what I wish I had 20 years ago. This is the book I wish someone would have given me to go, hey, you've got some big questions, and your current way. And again, I grew up in the church, and I didn't know these. I didn't know the ideas in this book when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
I'm writing it for that version of me. That's like, I wish I would have had these ideas. And it's been so fun for people to say, I've literally never heard this before. And it's like opening, this opening the cork to a brand new bottle. See how I did there?
Right. Yeah. I like it.
But it's like, you just unleash something that they're like, once you've seen it, there's no going back, because now God can also be different than you were told. Now you got to go pursue that and figure out whether there's truth in that. And I just love it.
I do too. And, I think for me, because, the center, we never leave the center in a once moment. Like you even share in your book that you're losing your job wasn't it was the big point, right? It was
Right.
probably being pushed off the cliff instead of, continuing a journey that you were already on. But to own that is scary because, I remember, I served overseas as a missionary post-college and was teaching high school seniors sort of biblical worldview, right? And then at the end of the class, I'm like, this doesn't work. Like Grudem doesn't make sense for these kids. Like it's not helping. And this is in 2006. And I had started like reading about the emerging church and like, oh wait, there might be different ways and story and how could we do it? But the center still held me and it still provided the security I needed to the point where like, I don't know if I fit. I remember even a month before I was let go of my job, I shared with my counselor, like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. And then I got fired and he's like, Andrew, you said this a month ago. Like, and I was like, well, yeah, but I wasn't ready to jump.
I didn't want to lose my job.
I didn't want to lose my job. All right. Cause there's economic security,
100%.
And so I think how do we take those steps knowing that there is fear in losing a lot? Because you're not asking us just to like change beliefs. There at times there's going to be a loss of community, of friendships like you and I have experienced. And so like people are like, okay, this sounds great, but I have to give up a lot.
Yeah. Here's what I found. And I don't love this observation I'm about to give you, Andrew.
No, fair.
But here's what I found. Okay. So I'm going to try to be honest to the research, right?
Yeah.
The majority of people I talk to, that this strikes a chord with them. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is me. The reason it's them is not because they chose it. Something happened.
Yeah.
And the commonality is something jolts you out of the center. And again, it can be a question, it can be a life event, it can be all sorts of things. Something jolts you out of the center. And then what you're describing is you start to realize you've been on a journey for a while.
Yeah.
You didn't really realize you were on a journey because you were doing it within the safety net. But if the safety net falls out on you, then you're forced to grapple with reality. And this book is when you're in that place, or you think that place is coming, or you want to be prepared for that place. I'm going to help you grapple with, you just lost your safety net. Now what? And for a lot of us, if you don't know now what, you just kind of panic in liminal space. And, I tell the story in the book, like I was financially screwed. I was screwed with my career. I mean, it was not, okay, this is fine. We'll figure it. It was like, this is wrecking my life. My kids had to go into counseling. I mean, it was like, it messed us up. And so I think you have to be honest about that, to say, for a lot of us, that has been the experience or is the experience. I wish, this is what I wish. I wish you and I could just sit here and go, you know what? I'm in the center. It's working great for me. Everything's fantastic. And I'm just going to choose to go to the edge because I think that would be better.
Yeah.
I just haven't really met that person.
No.
So like in theory, sure, you could do it. It tends to be the person that's like, I can't stop asking this question, or I can't unsee this, or I can't reconcile that, or what the hell has happened with this? I mean, it's like, those are the moments that you go, I have to rethink this. And I want to come alongside that person and like, okay, it's going to be okay. Take a deep breath. We're going to get through this. And the beauty of it is coming out of it, 6 years now for me, is having these kind of conversations with people like you and realizing there are other people on the edge. So you may have lost one community. I lost. I mean, we were trying to stay in Oregon. I lost everybody practically in that journey, which never saw that coming. So massive amounts of loss. And a lot of people are like, hey, when I started asking this question, I wasn't welcome in my community anymore. Yeah. Like in a lot of church spaces, that's the story I hear. Well, here's the encouragement. There are other communities waiting for you. There are other people ready for you. And when you start finding other people who are on the edge and you can be on the edge together, the amount of life and joy and hope you experience makes the whole thing worth it. And if you haven't got to that piece yet, just take my word on it and borrow hope from me, because I needed to borrow it, as I was going through my own journey. But now I'm getting to see it, and just getting the reactions to this book has been so encouraging. Because I'll be super honest, I don't care if someone's like, Jeremy's a good writer and that book is an interesting story. Like, that's not the win for me. The win is someone goes, oh my goodness, this equips me for my edge. This helps me come to life on the edge. That is like, then it's like, not only was writing the book worth it, but like the last 6 years and beyond, because again, I've been on this journey of the edge. All of it was worth it. And if I get to help other people come to life on the edge, like, gosh, I can't imagine a cooler thing.
No. And I do think there is beauty at the edge, right? Like, curiosity, asking good questions. It's what you're inviting the church and Christians to do, is just be curious. Be curious about the world, right? Like, let's be curious about what might be versus what we have known. And then you realize, oh, wait, there's so much more expansive spaces to move and walk in. Like, I remember first reading about like Eastern Orthodox Eucharist celebrations and being like, oh my gosh, wow, like there's beauty here. Like, it's not just a stale cracker and Welch's grape juice. Like, there's something beauty and holy here that I've been missing out on. Or reading about African American spirituality, just being curious helps, but it's also scary, right? Because then you're asking the questions that aren't safe, because, when we're in the center, we feel safe. And, you even write that it whispers to us that the world must be okay because I'm okay.
Yes. Yeah. And there's gatekeeping in the center, because you have to defend the center.
Right.
Because that's where the power is. It's where the control is. It's where the narrative is written, which, gives it all the influence, but it's a lot of work to maintain that.
Yeah.
And so that's where, when you become the person that's asking the question, that gets curious, the gatekeepers will often come at you. Like, no, we don't do that here.
No.
Because you're bad for business if you start asking questions.
Right.
And, it's hard when you start realizing, oh, I can't ask that question here.
Yeah.
Like, oh. Like, and I think a lot of people have that reaction to their church community. Like, they love their church community. Then they want to have a conversation. They find out, oh, my church won't have this conversation.
No. And
it can be about, like what a lot of people are realizing lately is, with everything going on with ICE, people are like, hey, this is problematic. We're literally doing these horrible things to people. Let's talk about this. And then find out their church is like, oh, no, we don't do that here.
No.
It's like, we can't talk about how our country is dehumanizing people and murdering people. And it's like, no, we don't talk about that here. And people are like, oh. And so I've like literally tried to help people, like, you're finding out what kind of church you went to. This has always been the kind of church you were at. You just didn't realize it.
Yeah.
And now you got to decide, do you want to live in that place, or do you want to go some community where you can talk about that and go like, hey, this is a problem. Like, let's address it.
Right. Because, I remember thinking, churches that are purple, right? Like, hey, we appeal to everybody. But in appealing to everybody, they're really not saying anything, because saying anything is going to upset either side.
Correct.
And so you're never actually, you're just trying to hold the center.
And here's what's so fascinating to me. And this is, again, I got the premise of the title is from Richard Rohr. I give him credit in chapter 1.
Yeah.
Richard Rohr's insight should cause us to pause, because, think about this question. Did Jesus pick sides? And the biblical answer is 100% he did. And the sides he picked he was always with the marginalized, the vulnerable, anyone who is victimized by the system. And he would stand in opposition to the system, right?
Mm-hmm.
So today, we should be willing to do the same thing, which means that, that purple church is standing with the system.
Right.
That's what the purple church is doing. Hey, we're gonna keep the status quo as it is. We're gonna let everything be as it is. That's not where Jesus would be standing.
No.
Jesus would be looking at who's marginalized in this community, who's victimized, who's being scapegoated. I'm gonna go be with them. And so the invitation for us is go be with them. Well, guess what? They're on the edges.
Yeah.
They're not in the center.
Right.
And that's the big aha to this, is when you start finding this and you're like, oh, I'm seeing Jesus in ways I've never seen Jesus before.
Right.
And it's not because Jesus isn't in the center. It's just that Jesus is uniquely on the edges.
On the
He's
edges.
uniquely standing with these marginalized people.
Right. that maybe the LGBTQ community might be able to help me see Jesus in ways that I have never seen Jesus before.
Oh, some of the coolest insights that I've had about the Bible have come from gay Christians.
Right.
And I'm like, I have never read that story like that, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm not gay. So when I listen to their vantage point, it's like, I'm so much better now because I got to take that insight from you. Well, guess what? You can do that for all sorts of people on the edge.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like, but if you never allow those people to have a voice, which the center does not, then you don't get those perspectives.
No. And yet, you talked about Jesus being, he moved towards the fringes, right? He moved towards the edges. And he had harsh words for the Pharisees, but he still dined with the Pharisees. And this has always been my rubbing point, right? Like, of like, okay, so how do I see Jesus on the edge and move towards the edge and find friendships and beauty and glory and nuance and complexity and drink Lemelson all day, but still dine with the center, and be prophetic when needed, but also be loving and gentle, because it's easy to move towards the edges and then condescendingly talk about the center. But I don't think that's Jesus. And so how do we, as we move, how do we still be gracious and love towards people who love Meiomi?
So here's what I think is interesting. I think what we assume is it's got to be all or nothing.
Right.
So we assume, all right, either I have to cut off the people from the center and I don't talk to them, or I fully condone what they're doing. And what you find in Jesus is not that.
No.
When, I was reading this recently, when I think it's Mary, pours perfume on Jesus' feet and her hair and starts wiping, crying, and all of this. You know where he is when that happens? He's at a Pharisee's house.
Right.
So at the Pharisee's house, you might think he'd be very polite and, hey, I don't want to offend the Pharisee. No. He absolutely throws shade at this guy.
Right.
You haven't washed my feet when I walk in. You haven't dried my feet with your hair. You haven't, And so he's at the Pharisee's house being fully Jesus, right? Like bringing the marginalized literally to the Pharisees.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's the sweet spot. And that's what I try to get to in chapter 3 is inviting this both and. It's not, these are the bad guys, these are the good guys. It's both and, living in that tension to say, go be with the Pharisees, go eat with them and bring the marginalized with you. Like that is the image you see in Jesus. So we don't cut anybody off, but it doesn't mean, well, I'm at their house, so I got to endorse what they're doing. And it's like, you don't have to endorse what they're doing to be in a relationship with them.
No. And you can be curious still, and I think Caleb Campbell, a mutual friend of ours, like, his ideas of like, okay, where can you
cover the book? Did you see that?
I know he endorsed. He's on the front cover, or the back
He's
cover.
on the back cover.
Because he's always, he encourages curiosity with the center, of like, okay, what's the value undergirding this and how can we find common ground, which is much more gentler, but still prophetic.
Well,
because go ahead.
Well, for someone who doesn't know, Caleb literally views himself as a missionary to Christian nationalists.
Yeah.
Which is a phenomenal way to navigate that. And the line that he said when he endorsed my book, that I was like, I want this line. I mean, literally, I picked this line for the back cover because I thought this captures the heart. He wrote this: for anyone who has loved the church enough to tell it the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the point. This is not a tirade against the church. It is love for the church, but I'm going to tell the church the truth. And to me, that's what we're trying to get to here, right? And that's what Caleb does so well.
Yeah,
it's like, I'm going to go into these Christian nationalist spaces not to endorse you, not to make you feel like I agree with you, but because I love you and I want something better for you. And I'm going to engage this with you.
Right. Because at some point, their world might come crashing down. And who are they going to look to help them when their community no longer supports them? Maybe it's it's me who showed some love and care and concern versus the other person.
Yeah, when they have a question, who are they going to ask?
Right. Yeah. And when somebody wants better wine, who are they going to ask? Like, hopefully.
When you get tired of Meiomi, you got to find someone that knows the good stuff.
Right. But again, Meiomi's fine. And, we only go to the grocery store and that's fine. But could you find, if, again, we're beating this drum, but like, when you're wanting to look outside of the center, you're not going to go to the grocery store anymore for wine. You're going to find a local wine shop and hopefully they're kind and gracious, which I found most of them are. And you're going to say, hey, I like this, help me find something similar, and here's my budget. And they will steer you rightly because they want to help you grow.
And that's to me the journey of anything. That's the journey of growth. So, okay, I want to get into wine more. Great. Here's where you start, and let's keep going. And then where I encourage people, I don't know, if you do this, but I always encourage people, you want to get the fullest experience with wine is join a winery as a member. And get regular shipments directly from a winery because those bottles they don't sell in a commercial audience. So that's their best stuff that they only sell to their direct members. You're going to get the purest, most beautiful expression of what they make in those bottles. Those bottles will never be found at a wine shop, right? And you know this. And so to me, I say, hey, if you really want to experience, now again, you're going to spend a little bit more money and it's a commitment. You're going to say like, hey, I signed up, I get X amount of bottles. And yet the majority of the wine I drink are wine memberships that I have, and I have a number of them at this point. And, it's like, but those are bottles that are incredible. And so then when I drink Meiomi, like, yeah, if I went to someone's house and they like, hey, they get out Meiomi, I'm not even going to say one comment about it.
No.
I'm going to drink it. We're going to have a great evening. It's going to be great. I'm not going to be like, don't you know that? No, I'm going to be totally on board with that. But if they were to ask me, hey, do you like Meiomi? Do you, I would say, actually, here's what I drink. I'd love to bring you a bottle sometime now that I know you're a wino,
Yeah.
And it would be like an invitation to more. And so to me, that's and you mentioned curiosity. I'm obsessed with curiosity. Yeah. Like the world would be better if we were more curious. I wish curiosity was a fruit of the spirit. If I was writing the list, I would add it in because to me, it literally leads to good things in your life.
Absolutely. Yeah, because when we're curious, we're open to new ideas. We're open to exploring, and
you're humble.
Yeah,
you're not clenching with certainty. You're like, hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't know this. Maybe this person sitting across the table from me can show me something I've never seen before. I mean, like, such good things come from curiosity. Like, if nothing else you get from this conversation, just be more curious in your life, and like everything that leads to will be good.
Yeah. Even at the table, right? Like with food, wine, like when you're curious, you're open to new ideas. And we see it with our kids, right? When our kids are curious about trying something new, they don't know. They're like, oh, this is better than I expected. Like, for instance, St. Patrick's Day, I made just a sheet pan dinner of bratwurst, potatoes, and Brussels sprouts, tossed it with whole grain mustard and some maple syrup. My daughter sees the Brussels sprouts. She's like, no, can I have something else for vegetable? And I'm like, just try it. By the end of the night, she's going back, are there any more crispy Brussels sprouts? Those are the best. Like, nice. Can I have those?
Well done.
And because we were gentle and we're like, hey, just try it. If you don't like it, maybe we can talk about another vegetable. But like, and it worked, right? And that's the beauty of seeing something where like they begin to experience the world in new ways beyond Kraft mac and cheese and Dino Bites.
And I love this analogy. Okay, so are you a fan of cheese?
I love. My first job was a fromagier, so I was a cheese guy in a restaurant.
Okay, wow, you're exceeding my expectations on every level. All right, so let me ask you this: have you ever had a cheese you don't like?
I've had cheeses that I'm like, it's not my go-to, but I usually like, especially if I spend the money for good cheese.
So my claim to fame for years is I would brag, like, I'm the guy that I'm such a cheese aficionado. I've never had a cheese I don't like. And like anytime someone would have like some funky gnarly, like that thing is, I would like, this is amazing, love it.
Yeah.
And my wife and I took a trip to France, and we had one of the most incredible wine tastings of my life. We did a wine tasting under the Louvre, and it was literally the cellars that used to be where the kings would have their wine barrels. I mean, just like surreal type stuff, right?
Yeah.
And the tasting is a wine and cheese pairing all around France. And so what they did is, they would get a wine from this region and then a cheese from the same region, right? So like you eat the food that grows where the wine grows. It's like, that's like ultimate European level. I'm on board. It's so cool. Yeah. So we're having, I don't even know how many, like, let's say there's 12 different wines we try and then 12 different cheeses, right? And we're going through all of these, and we get to one of the cheeses, and it is the nastiest, stank, I mean, foul. I don't know what died in this mixture. Okay. And I get to it, and I have this moment where I'm like, I can never use my line again. I have just discovered a cheese I don't like. Yeah. And it was one of those moments where I'm like, what have I done? Like, oh no. But I think this is the beauty of curiosity, is like, are there cheeses out there you don't like? You don't know until you try a whole bunch of cheese. Like, I just think this is the world, And so now I have, like, literally in my life, there's been one that I would tell you, if you offered it to me, I can't remember what the name of it was.
Oh, okay.
If you offered it to me, I'd be like, no, thank you. I'll pass. Like, and no one else in our group could eat the cheese either. So, I mean, it was some kind of cheese. I don't remember what it was, but like nobody could get this thing down. But to me, like, the world is so big and we're content with so little.
Yes.
In the sense, not in a material sense, in an idea sense, or hey, I want to know more. I want to experience more. It's like, and take that with God. Like, we're so content to say, I was given these answers when I was in Sunday school, and they will work for me the rest of my life.
Right.
And I just want to go, keep going. Ask more questions. Dive deeper. And you may not. That's why they call it a slippery slope. You don't know where it will lead you.
No.
That's the joy of curiosity.
Yeah.
But it will lead you to some beautiful things. And my journey with Jesus has been, there's never been a question that I've asked that I'm like, well, I wish I never would have asked that. It's like every single time I'm like, Jesus is even better than I thought. And I thought he was pretty good.
Fair. Although, if I'm honest, there are times where I'm like, I wish I was still naive. I wish I still had simplistic faith.
But I bet you don't really. You wish the comfort of it.
Right.
But you wouldn't go back.
No. And
so what you miss is the comfort of knowing that. And I miss that too.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yes.
The center is a great place to live.
It is. And it did. Yes. And even 2 years in, I'm finding more expanse. Like, I would never have these conversations if I was still working at a church. Right.
Well, here's my encouragement for you, and maybe anyone who also is in a similar timeline as you. Okay. I read this was in Diana Butler Bass's latest book.
Right.
And she has like this offhanded comment about a conversation she had with an editor of hers. And she said her editor gave her one of the best advice that she's ever got, which was never write about anything major in your life until you've had enough time to process it. And she asked, okay, well, how do you know how much is enough time to process something before you can like move on and write about it? And she said 5 years.
Wow.
I read that after I had just like finished the draft of this, and it had just been 5 years.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't know who this editor is, but they're on to something. Like, there's something about, I think, the 5-year mark where the experience you went through, you've had enough time to make sense of it and heal from it and process it. And if you've done the work, then you get to start seeing the fruit of that. And so you're not even halfway.
Thanks.
So drink some wine and hang in there.
Yes, I will drink my Lemelson, and
hang in
I
there.
will continue to drink good wine and have fun conversations and explore new.
No, but I do say that as an encouragement of if you think you have to have it all figured out now, you have that stress as well.
Right. Yeah.
Like, why doesn't it make sense? Why don't I feel great about this? Why don't which was me for years 1 and years 2 and 3 and 4. It's like, what am I doing? What is
Yeah.
this? I don't understand.
Yeah. And just to allow the grief cycle, like, you know, it's a job, move on, right? Like, you know, but I think to allow the grief cycle to really play its way out is hard, and you have to be patient. But when you have bills to pay and a family to take care of and a life to mend, you know, that 5 years feels too much.
My goal in my future is to someday make as much as I made as a lead pastor. I'm not there.
No. And thankfully, I think you and I both have wives that have jobs that have sustained.
My wife has been our breadwinner for this journey, and I mean that I like the center takes care of you, and that's why I tell people like I loved my job. I loved the paycheck I got. It was fantastic. Maybe someday with the work that I'm doing, I can match that. Like that's literally kind of like my goal in my head of like, if I could ever match that, because I really believe in what I'm doing. It just doesn't pay the same as, it paid in the center.
No, it doesn't. But it's fun.
The wine is better.
The wine is better. It's very true. Communion is better.
Yes, it's very true.
Well, Jeremy, it's a question I ask all of my guests as we wrap up, and you've hit on it, but I think a summary would be nice. What's the story you want the church to tell?
I think the story is there's more out there than we've settled for. And if we are in the center and everything's working, it's easy to believe it's all there is. Mm-hmm. And yet, I would encourage the church, there is more. And Jesus is inviting us to more. And in particular, Jesus is inviting us to the edge, where there's a unique kind of truth, as Richard Rohr has explained. And that's been my story. That's been what I have found. That's what I have been connecting with so many people on in their own journeys. And that's what I would want for everyone in the church. And so I think you can exist. This is the thing. I'm not outside the circle. I'm still in the circle. So, in my whole analogy, the center and I, we're in the same loop, right? We're just in different spots of it. So I don't view them as the enemy. I don't view them as, they need to be converted or anything like that. It's just, let's figure out the best way to find and experience Jesus. And I would encourage you, if you're right in the center of it, come to the edge a little bit. See what happens. And if you could do it by choice, it'll be a lot easier.
Yeah. And maybe it's not moving from Meiomi to a single-vineyard Lemelson wine that is beyond my price point most days. But maybe it's just a different bottle, a slightly different, right? Like,
or even just trying another bottle.
Yeah.
Right. Like, how often do we just go, I like Meiomi, I'll drink Meiomi the rest of my life, and I'll never, try other bottles, which is even like this. I was excited to try Meiomi. I've never had it.
Right.
And so when when you pitch this idea, I was like, I literally told you, I've never had Meiomi. I would love an excuse to do it.
Right. And then some fun questions about food. And you may have hit on it already. What's one food you refuse to eat?
Mayonnaise.
Mayonnaise.
It has to be blended into something where I can't taste the flavor of mayonnaise. Okay. Mayonnaise and coconut are the two things that trigger my gag reflex, and I have no idea why.
All right.
If they're blended into something else that I can't taste that flavor uniquely, I'm fine. So if you put mayonnaise in a sauce and it's blended, I'm fine. If I can taste the mayonnaise, I'm in trouble.
Okay. Fair enough. What's one of the best things you've ever eaten?
Gosh. I once had a bone-in filet.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of that?
I think I've heard of it once or twice, yes.
I was in Texas, as you would expect from a great steak. And this restaurant, I'm a filet guy. I love fillets. And they had a bone-in filet. And I was like, I've never even heard of that as a thing. And it was probably the greatest steak I've ever had in my life. Like, literally melted in my mouth. Like, unbelievable.
And I thought we could be friends.
Why can we not be friends?
I don't like filet. I think it's overpriced. There's no fat. There's no flavor. Like,
what? You're kidding me right now. You are not serious with this take.
Give me a New York. Give me a ribeye.
You like the fat.
Of course.
You want all the marbling.
I want all the marbling.
Ugh.
I want
Have you
some.
seen what that looks like?
Oh yeah, it's delicious. Prime.
Ugh.
Come on. You don't maintain
Were
this
you
physique.
were you ever a server?
No.
Did you ever work in a restaurant like for steaks?
I was a chef. Yeah, I cooked steaks. I've butchered.
And that's your go-to?
Oh yeah.
I worked at Texas Roadhouse. And
that's
would see all
Meiomi of
these
Texas.
steaks.
That's Meiomi of steaks. Like
Okay, fair. I'll receive that, Andrew. That's a fair criticism coming from you. I receive that. I remember thinking, like, why would anyone order these ribeyes? Like, when you could get these fillets were like way better cuts of meat. But I guess, yes, it's all real. I'm sure if you made us ribeyes, it would probably blow my mind.
yeah, maybe again we need to do a side by side tasting, and then have maybe Bordeaux and Napa cabs.
But to me, like a good cab with a fillet, that would be like if you had a last meal type deal, you know? Like,
well, that was my next question. Because there's a conversation amongst chefs about last meals, as in if you only had one last meal to enjoy, what would it be? So if Jeremy had one last meal, would it be cab and fillet?
I think it would be. It would be a bone-in fillet with a Bordeaux blend.
Okay. From Napa, or are you going to go French style?
I'm going to go French. I'm going to go right from Bordeaux. Cab heavy.
Cab heavy.
With Merlot.
All right. So we're more left bank if my geography.
I'll drink some effing Merlot on my last meal.
Because Merlot's good.
But I love Merlot. That's why people dog on. I'm like, look, I'll drink it. Like I got no qualms on Merlot. That to me, so like seafood is the other one that I would maybe like. I love crab legs. Like I'm obsessed with crab legs, and living in Oregon, Dungeness crab is like so good. But I think that the ultimate pairing I've ever had in my life is a great steak with a great glass of wine. And, as you know, a lot of food like dominates wine, where then all of a sudden it's like, this wine doesn't taste good anymore.
No.
The steak and Cabernet pairing is hard to beat. I mean, that it's like, it just goes so well. And it's almost like this was meant to be, I don't know. I feel like it'd have to be that.
No, it's fair.
What's yours?
My last meal?
Yeah.
I don't know. It would probably be like calling a chef and being like, hey, can you just cook for me? Like, I just want to be fed by a great chef with great wine, and not think in that way of like ordering, but like just give me your best and let me go out with like
something crafted just for you. Have you ever seen the movie Pig?
No, but I was reading about it in your book and was like, I need to find this movie.
You need to, because he's a chef. That's his whole storyline. And there is a scene in that would uniquely resonate with you. Okay. Like even more than it did with me. And it was profound for me. I'm giving you homework. Let the listeners note. I've given Andrew a homework assignment. I want you to watch this movie. I think you will absolutely resonate with it in a profound way.
Okay. And then from me to you, have you watched Babette's Feast?
No, I've heard about this though. Gisela Kreglinger was, I think, talking about it.
Yes.
Are you a big fan?
Oh, it's one of the most profound movies, and I think it actually illustrates your book.
Is that the one that's really old, or no?
No, it's from the 1980s. It's based on an Isak Dinesen short story. Won Academy Award Best Foreign Film.
Okay, I'm going to watch it.
Yeah.
And you better watch Pig.
Okay. Fair enough. And maybe we'll come back on and talk about.
That would be amazing. Follow up for our homework assignment.
Yes. So, awesome. Well, Jeremy, if people want to find out more about you, learn about your work, where do they find you?
So my website is jeremyjernigan.com. It's just my name. That's where I have everything. So I host a weekly podcast on Sundays where I do a Bible message in 10 minutes or less. Every other week, I do a Cabernet and Pray podcast episode that's longer form. I do a weekly blog, and then all the other stuff that I'm working on is there. And then Edge of the Inside is the website specifically for the book. You can find out extra content from it, stuff that we're doing on it, and then all the different forms, doing signed copies as well, if someone's interested in that. And I do a typewriter note. I'm a big typewriter guy. So if you get a signed copy, you get a typewriter note for me as well.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Do check out Jeremy's book. Do buy The Edge of the Inside. By the time this podcast releases, the book is available wherever you find your books. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, or sharing it with others. Thanks for joining us on this episode of The Biggest Table, where we explore what it means to be transformed by God's love around the table and through food. Until next time, bye.